Welcome back, everyone. I'm Keegs, and today we're going to be picking up where we left off with the Geoff Johns Green Lantern 2005 run, and today we're going to be talking about issues 7 through 9. Now, something important to note is that these issues actually are the crossover event with the huge Infinite Crisis event that happened in the greater DC universe. Now, there's not a ton of actual crossing over, so the only thing important to really know is that this takes place after the very first issue of Infinite Crisis, but doesn't really have a whole lot to do with it other than that. But essentially, the team has broken up like an 80s rock band, and they're kind of just doing their own thing, though they had a battle with Mongul in the first issue of Infinite Crisis, and the Watchtower was destroyed. Mongul was able to escape, and with that escape, he went through a teleporter and landed on Earth, which is where we pick up in issue 7 of Green Lantern. But this issue starts off with a farmer talking to his son when, out of nowhere, Mongul Jr. smashes to Earth, saying that he didn't know why his father wanted to conquer Earth, but he's going to pick up where his father left off anyways. And just like that, he murders the farmer and his son for no reason. Good job, Mongul. Very scary. You can murder farmers. Congrats. But cut over to Green Lantern and Green Arrow, and they're saving some construction worker from falling to his death while talking about why Hal wants to even live in Coast City anymore, since it's basically a ghost town. Oliver thinks that he should just take some time off from duty and responsibility, but Hal fires back that Oliver's basically ignoring his family too for duty and responsibility, so Hal doesn't really want to hear it. Hal calls up the Green Lantern John Stewart, who's on Oa, to ask how it's going over there with the rebuilding of the Lantern Corps, to which John tells him that there are a crazy number of new recruits. But John also mentions that Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman just had a run-in with Mongul on the moon who managed to escape. John gives Hal the coordinates of where Mongul jumps to, and Hal takes off pulling Oliver with him. Hal is so determined to get there because it was Mongul and Cyborg Superman that originally destroyed Coast City and essentially ruined his life. On the way over, Hal gets a call from his brother Jim, who tells him that it's his nephew's birthday and he'd really like to see his Uncle Hal. Hal kind of brushes his brother off, but tells him he'll try to be there, though his brother knows better than to expect to see Hal because he knows Hal always lets duty and responsibility take priority over his family. But speaking of family, we cut over to the planet Debston 4, where Mongul's sister says that her family is her weakness, and she plans to meet Mongul on Earth and destroy her weakness. Just then though, Hal and Oliver arrive at a farm where they see some really strange plants, some of which have attached to the animals and humans that look like they're in some sort of stasis or trance, which the power ring tells them that it's supposed to subdue and place you in a dreamlike state. Just before Green Lantern and Green Arrow help them though, Mongul surprise attacks them. Mongul tries to attach some plants to them, but after a tough fight, Green Lantern and Green Arrow manage to defeat Mongul and chain him up. Just then though, Oliver's son comes up and tells Oliver that his wife just started contractions and his baby is coming, so Oliver says that it's his cue to leave and heads straight to the hospital. Hal says he'll deal with Mongul and flies him to Oa to be contained. On his way though, his dad gives him a call and wait, what? His dad died when Hal was just a boy. How can he be talking to him right now? Ah, of course. Hal and Oliver have actually entered into the dreamlike state of mercy. In the dreamlike state, it's been years later. Green Arrow is fighting crime with his son Connor and comes home to his beautiful wife and his second son. His wife is pregnant again, and Oliver talks about how his life couldn't be any more perfect now with their third child on the way. Hal returned to Oa where the Green Lantern Corps is fighting Parallax, led by Green Lantern Sinestro. Sinestro and Hal quip a bit back and forth, and Sinestro ends up telling Hal how proud of him he is, and he's glad to call Hal a friend. Hal then meets up with his dad to go on a plane ride, and up in the air, his dad can tell something is wrong. And he tells Hal that the worst thing he can do is live life in fear that something good will end. See, Hal by this point I think knows that this isn't real, but he doesn't really want it to end, so it's almost like he's forcing himself to stay in the dreamlike state. Meanwhile, in the real world, Mongul is working on a teleporter machine and tells it to activate the DNA locator. In Green Arrow's dream, his wife is now giving birth and he rushes to the hospital again. Once the baby is born, he picks it up and immediately realizes that something is not right. He dropped to his knees and all of a sudden he remembers. He knows that he was with his friend Hal fighting Mongul, and he knows that he's in the dream. He screams for Hal to wake up, which translates into Hal's dream as watching his father die in the plane crash again. Fortunately though, Hal is able to push through it and finally able to wake up. Oliver explains that since they were only connected to one plant and only one world was created for them, and since Hal's willpower is stronger than Oliver's, his vision won out. It showed Oliver the world that Hal thought he deserved, not the perfect world for Oliver. In fact, Oliver tells him that he was actually there for the birth of Connor, but he got afraid and left. He had already had his chance and failed, and there was no going back and changing that now. They start to look for Mongul when Mongul's sister crashes to Earth, challenging him for the Mercy Plants, which was a gift from their father to both of them. Green Lantern intervenes and a fight breaks out between all of them. Oliver is fighting Mongul's sister, and probably my favorite moment of this fight is when Oliver runs out of arrows and Hal uses his power ring to replenish his quiver with energy arrows for him to use. Green Lantern then activates the Stargate by sending both Mongul and his sister back to the planet they came from, which really pisses off Mongul, and in turn he literally punches his sister's head off, killing her. Afterwards, Hal and Oliver are talking, and Oliver says that Mongul might be a giant POS, but he was right in saying that life is for the living, and it's time for Hal to stop looking back to the past and the tragedies that occurred and paid attention to the family that he still has living. To which Hal agrees to this, and he decides that it's time to go pay attention to his family, and he goes to his nephew's birthday party and hangs out with his actual family. Oliver, likewise, ends up calling his son and trying to spend more time with his own family. Sometime later though, Hal returned to Oa, where Salak was ringing him out after Hal asked if they can fix his power battery that was destroyed a while back when he fought a giant mutant shark. Eventually though, Salak speaks to Hal as a friend and lets him know that even though many of the Lanterns are new, word has been spreading of Hal's time spent as Parallax and his evil deeds, so Salak is concerned that many of the new recruits are gonna turn hostile towards him. Hal replies to this, what else is new? He had a few good weeks of none of the Lanterns hating him, but alas, we are back to where we started. Oliver tells Hal that Batman wanted to see him, so he shows up in the Batcave and tells Bruce that he could have just called directly, but Bruce says that Oliver is still on speed dial, implying that he's still really angry with Hal for his time as Parallax and has not yet forgiven him for that. Plus, the last time they met, Hal actually punched Batman in the face so that he could go defeat Parallax without being berated by Batman. Batman tells him that recently there was an incident with a tiger killing a man, then tattooing their crime on their chest. But this isn't a case of an anti-hero killing villains, this is a hitman, and he just happens to tattoo something bad they did on their chest. For example, one guy's chest read, "Rude to waiters." I'm not sure that deserved a death penalty, but you know, to each is their own. This guy calls himself the Tattooed Man, but it isn't the same person that Green Lantern has fought with in the past. Hal asks Bruce if he wants to go get this guy, but Bruce just says he's busy and basically just calling in Hal to go off and deal with that himself. Hal kind of fires back at Batman though, saying that he isn't a Robin or a Justice League member and he can't just be ordered around, when all of a sudden Batman turns around and punches Hal in the exact same manner that Hal did to him during the fight with Parallax. Batman says, "Now we're even," and Hal kind of chuckles and says, "That's fine," and asks again if Batman wants to go catch this dude, which Bruce now agrees to. In the car, Batman tells Hal to buckle up, to which Hal says when he's wearing the ring, he can't really be much safer than that. So Batman turns the car quickly, which makes Hal smash his head on the side, just kind of for shits and giggles. This is one of those great moments of pettiness between the two of them, but also something that I think starts to show that the friendship is kind of returning, because they start squabbling like brothers again, but at the end of the day, it's like brothers. Cut to the Tattooed Man, and he sees his next target is Harvey Dent. The person hiring him begins to explain the evil deed that Dent has done, but Tattooed Man says it don't bother, he knows a bunch of evil crap that Harvey's done. Apparently, he feels like he is saving these people's soul by tattooing their sins upon them, and in some sense, he's just some crazy fanatic. Just then, though, Green Lantern shows up telling him that he's under arrest, and the Tattoo Man unleashes a bunch of monstrosities on Hal. He says that they sense the sins within Hal are going to be among the greatest tattoos once they get imprinted back onto the Tattooed Man. So the Tattooed Man seems to be getting stronger by killing these people, and whatever sin they have gets tattooed back on the Tattooed Man, and he can use that in the future again to release on some other poor soul. But just then, Batman shows up right behind the Tattooed Man, and they begin to fight hand to hand. Tattooed Man says that it was the Krill tribes of Medora that taught him the art of skin grafting, as they call it, and taking away others' sins. Then Batman punches him so hard he just knocks him out right on the spot, and they're able to subdue him. See, the plan had been all along to get the tattoos off of Tattooed Man to chase down the Green Lantern, while Batman was able to just show up and face the man one-on-one. They go back to the Batcave, and Hal gives his power ring to Batman and tells him to put it on. Initially, Batman refuses, but Hal asks if he's scared, which actually gets Batman to try it on. At first, he isn't able to get the ring to work at all. Hal tells him that it helped him overcome his greatest fears. They both watch something happen that they couldn't stop but really wanted to. Batman asks if he's supposed to think about that tragic moment or just forget it entirely, but Hal tells him that you can never forget it, but just for one moment, you have to live with it. Think about the reason you became the Batman. What were you feeling in that exact moment? Batman, through great determination, is able to produce a complex construct of many bats, though Hal then quickly tells him to take control of it and put that moment behind him for just a second, which is when he's able to produce a construct of his parents, and he just looks at it for a while. He then takes the ring off and says he doesn't want to. Not just yet does he want to forget that moment and put it behind him, but he thanks Hal and says that, for the record, he is glad that Hal's back. Batman uses his name Hal for the first time since before he became Parallax, showing that their relationship has been repaired. But that's pretty much going to wrap up issues 7 through 9, and it's important to note that between issues 9 and 10, the entirety of Infinite Crisis will take place. So our next video, picking up with issue 10, will be in a post-Infinite Crisis universe. This means that it's going to pick up 1 year after the events of issue 9, and certain things will be changed, and some of the characters' origins have actually been altered a little bit. But I'm Keegs, and I hope you enjoyed this. I will catch you all next time to talk about more Green Lantern content and Hal Jordan's journey.